Hi, this is Barry Brown, Science Librarian at the University of Montana Mansfield Library. If you have an assignment where you're looking for information about a particular topic for a university ecology course, in this case, the example is information about the effects of climate change on western Montana ecosystems, and you find a variety of search results, you're going to want to pick out the best ones. Your attention is always the most limited resource you have. So in picking out the results of your search, whether you're in a database like Web of Science or Google Scholar or the library main discovery search, typically you want to ask yourself, what type of information source are you looking at? Is it popular or scholarly? Is it peer-reviewed? Is it one of the best sources? Here's some examples of results from searching for information about the effects of climate change on western Montana ecosystems. So go ahead and pause this video and take a look at these 10 sources and ask yourself which would be the 2 or 3 best sources on this page. Often we evaluate our search results by clicking into the source, and of course you can't do that with this video, but you often get a lot of clues by doing that. But before you even do that, the words in the results ought to give you some clues. So number 1 is a journal article. You can see the volume, number or issue, page range. It's from a journal named Science. This is indeed scholarly and peer-reviewed. Now, not everything that's in a peer-reviewed journal is necessarily an article. In this case, we have a good bet that it is. It's a 3 or 4 page range, but sometimes you'll find things like opinions or book reviews in peer-reviewed journals. But this thing is a peer-reviewed journal. The title of the article shows me that it sounds very relevant to our topic. Now, you're going to get to know journals as you use them, and sometimes this journal, Science, is listed as Science Magazine, but it is indeed a peer-reviewed journal, and it happens to be one of the most prestigious journals. There's a kind of a hierarchy in how well-read journals are, how hard it is to publish in them, and how likely it is that if you publish in it, your paper will be read and cited by others. So Science, Nature, Proceedings of the Natural Academy of Sciences are all some of the most prestigious journals. So here we have a result that's very relevant for our topic. It's fairly recent, and it's in a very good, credible source. Okay, result number 2, this is labeled as a podcast. We see from the URL that it's hosted by the United States Geological Survey, a U.S. government site. Now, what is a podcast? It could be an audio or it could be a video creation. The fact that it's hosted by the USGS and that the title of it sounds very relevant, Cascading Climatic Change Impacts in the Crown of the Continent Ecosystem, that looks like a pretty valuable source. And if we explored a little bit more, we might find that the author of this, Dan Faegre, is one of the leading authorities on climate change in western Montana. So very good author, hosted by a government agency. Now, is this scholarly or popular? We wouldn't know until we listen to it. I have a feeling just by looking at the title that it's probably scholarly, and it would not be peer-reviewed, of course. It's not in a peer-reviewed journal. But it looks like potentially a good source, although you'd have to ask yourself, what will you do with it? Will you use a clip of it in a presentation? Will you listen to it and then cite it in a paper? There's ways to do that. Moving on to result number 3, this thing does not sound very relevant from the title. It's in something called Oil and Gas Journal, but you can't always trust names. Oil and Gas Journal is actually more of a magazine or trade publications. Every profession, whether you're a hair cutter or brain surgeon, has its own trade publication. And so Oil and Gas Journal is sometimes written in a technical manner, but it's not research articles. And again, it's hard to judge that just by looking at these results. That is not one of the better sources on this page. Result number 4, it's from a Montana newspaper, Great Falls Tribune. It sounds pretty relevant. Now, it would be a popular source, not scholarly. And you'd have to ask yourself for this college course whether you'd want to be citing a newspaper for this particular assignment. If you were really comprehensive, then there's nothing wrong with going to credible, popular sources. But when you've just got to focus on a few sources and your time's limited, you probably want to stick more to the scholarly sources. So I would pass this one up. Number 5, this is an incomplete citation, so it's hard to judge it, but Climatic Change is a peer-reviewed journal, and it's one of the authors happens to be a Nobel Prize-winning faculty member from the University of Montana, and it sounds fairly relevant to our topic. And it looks like from this result that it's cited by 72 other researchers. So that would kind of elevate this as being worthy of attention. However, there is one factor that would give me pause with this one. Can you imagine what that might be? It's over 20 years old, so this might be a good source, but if I could find more recent sources for this particular topic, I think I would. Now, that's not true for all topics, but for climate change, it's a rapidly evolving topic, and so I probably would look for a more recent source. Okay, citation or result number 6. This, again, is kind of an incomplete citation, but this is a book or a book chapter. It's hard to tell which, but it's from a scholarly publisher, Springer. Often you don't know if a book is scholarly or popular until you look at it, but in this case it's a good bet that it's a scholarly book. It sounds fairly relevant to our topic, and it's fairly recent. Number 7, this thing is from Newsweek, a popular magazine, and it does not sound very relevant. I would definitely pass this one by. Result number 8, this is a government document. So government documents might be things published on their own as kind of a report, or it might be more of a chapter in something else. And in this case, there's a page range, so it's more like a chapter or an article in the general technical report put out by the Pacific Northwest Research Station. So these Forest Service documents are often very credible, very good sources of information. They're usually scholarly. Occasionally they're popular. You can't tell till you look at it, but usually they're research reports. They're not technically peer-reviewed, but they can often be good information sources for topics. Now, in this particular case, it does sound somewhat relevant to our topic, but it also sounds a little bit like it's applied research, decision support systems. So this is kind of almost a managerial type research thing. So I would pass this one by. It does not sound like very general science on climate change. Number 9 is a blog. So a blog post could be popular or scholarly, depending who wrote it and who the audience is. You wouldn't know till you looked at it. It's being hosted by a nonprofit organization, so I don't get a lot of clues here. I would wonder what the point of view is. I would need to investigate much more about the author's credentials and what the point of view is, find out if it's a climate denying site or what the story is. So it wouldn't catch my attention on this first page of results. Okay, the last one, number 10. This is a peer-reviewed scholarly research journal, Forest Ecology and Management. It sounds very relevant from the title, and it's published very recently, so definitely that rises to the top of my list. So when I look at this page of results, I would definitely investigate number 1 and number 10. I would go to those articles and read them and probably incorporate them into a paper or presentation. I might go to the podcast, result number 2. I might go to number 5. I might go to the book number 6, but definitely 1 and 10 would jump out at me. Not all information sources should be treated as equal. They may very well differ in quality, accuracy, credibility, significance, relevance, etc. So if I'm looking for information on plate tectonics and I'm searching the web, I might find these 2 sources on the screen right now. They're both books, but they're very much not equal sources at all. Number 1 is a self-published book disputing plate tectonics and talking about an expanding Earth. It doesn't matter that the author has a PhD. It's a self-published thing with idea that's not supported by scientific consensus in any way, shape, or form. The second thing is a book on global tectonics, plate tectonics, published by a well-known scholarly publisher, Wiley Blackwell, commonly used as a textbook for graduate students in geology, very credible, authoritative source on plate tectonics. So you would only want to cite the second, not the first. So you want to ask yourself, whenever you're looking at results, what kind of information source do I have? Is it a book, government document, journal article, magazine article, website, etc.? The way things are packaged tells you a little bit about the source and the usefulness of it for your particular purpose. Is it scholarly or popular? Who wrote it? Who's the intended audience? Who published it? Is it peer-reviewed or not? Does it cite other credible, authentic, authoritative research? And then you also want to ask yourself, is the thing worth retrieving and reading and putting your attention into it and your time? How relevant is the article to your topic? You've got clues from the title, abstract, maybe some other keywords that are listed in your search results. Is the research or the results significant once you're looking at the actual article or book? Again, what kind of information source is it? Is that the kind you want for your paper or presentation? Is the source credible, unbiased, authoritative? Is the article, if you have one, peer-reviewed or not? How current is the article? Now, determining if something is scholarly versus popular, journal articles definitely come packaged in a certain way. They usually have parts to them: introductions, methods, results, discussion, etc. Lots of tables and graphs and charts, often lengthy bibliographies. They typically describe original research unless they're review articles. They're written by experts in the field, primarily for other well-educated researchers in an academic or technical writing style. Magazine articles are written for a general audience and often by writers who are not necessarily experts in that field. Now, determining if something is peer-reviewed or not. Peer review is when articles are reviewed by other experts in the field, other scholars, before the thing is published. So typically, a researcher submits an article for peer review to a peer-reviewed journal. That's sent to other researchers to review, and typically it's rejected. And if the researcher who submitted it did a good job, then it's often rejected with a request to revise and resubmit. Otherwise, it's often just rejected outright. Now, some databases only index peer-reviewed articles. So Web of Science, Google Scholar, primarily it's peer-reviewed articles. Some databases allow you to limit to only looking at results that are scholarly and peer-reviewed, or refereed. Refereed is another name for peer review. Sometimes you'll see an article and it has a date submitted, date revised, date accepted. That's a good indication it's peer-reviewed. There is a reference source in the University of Montana library databases called ULRICs, and that will tell you definitively if something is peer-reviewed or not. And you can also typically find instructions to authors on the open web for journals, and it'll usually describe the review process. So here's an example of a database that's allowing limiting to scholarly or peer-reviewed journal results. This example on the screen right now shows a journal article with date received, date revised, date accepted, again indicating peer review. Here's that reference source, Ulrich's Web, where I could go into the A to Z databases on the University of Montana Library webpage, and I could go into this database and I could look up a particular journal. Here's an example of looking up oil and gas journal, and it tells me that it's actually a magazine or trade publication. It's not peer-reviewed. Whereas this is an example within Ulrichs of looking up climatic change. It tells me it's a academic or scholarly journal, and that yes, it is refereed, which is again another term for peer-reviewed. So to summarize, often you are looking for peer-reviewed research results for university science courses, but most important of all for information is the accuracy, credibility, and whether that particular information source suits your needs. It's not that one kind of information sources or kind is always better than another type or kind. It's that some information is more appropriate, authoritative, and or effective when used in different venues. So for university courses, again, science courses in particular, peer-reviewed journal articles probably the most important source. Similarly, if I want to go to a city council meeting and debate the health effects of spraying Tordon on the hillsides to kill weeds, scholarly biomedical research articles are probably going to have a lot more weight than non-peer-reviewed sources off the web or somewhere else. However, if I'm going into middle school to talk to students about the nitrogen cycle, I'm going to want popular sources. I would not want to use scholarly sources with them. I would want to share popular sources from trusted, credible sources. Maybe something like Newsweek, maybe something like the Tuesday edition, the New York Times, the science section. Another example, if I want to do the environmental history of a particular river, I would want both kinds of information sources, both scholarly and popular, as long as they're credible and accurate. I'm going to integrate both of those for something like that. Good luck with your assignment for your course.